The door slams harder than he intends. The sound cracks through the room like a snapped ruler. A few heads turn. A few more don't bother, they already know who it is. Darius Cole stands in the doorway, chest rising and falling too fast, backpack strap digging into his shoulder. Sweat cools against the back of his neck. His shirt is wrinkled. One shoelace is half loose. He smells faintly of bus exhaust and the industrial disinfectant that clings to his mother's jacket every morning. The classroom is too bright. Fluorescent lights flatten everything into sharp edges, white walls, straight desks, polished floors. Westbridge Academy always feels sterile, like nothing messy is allowed to survive here. A quiet voice from the back row mutters, "Told you." A soft laugh follows. Several phones lift, subtle but deliberate. Screens glow. Someone taps record. Professor Whitman does not raise his voice. He doesn't need to. He stands at the front of the room, arms folded, chalk dust faint on his sleeves. Behind him, the board is filled, not with the neat, guided examples of a normal lesson. These are dense, layered. Symbols crowd one another like a language not meant for beginners. Whitman glances at the clock, then at Darius. "Mr. Cole," he says evenly. "How generous of you to join us." Darius swallows. His throat tastes metallic from the run. "Sorry, Professor." Whitman steps aside, revealing the full weight of the board. Two massive problems dominate the white space. Multivariable expressions tangled with probability notation. Graduate-level structure disguised as classroom cruelty. A few students lean forward. Whitman taps the board with his chalk. The sound is dry, sharp. "Since you've missed the first part of today's session," he says, "perhaps you can make yourself useful." A pause. "Solve one." The room inhales together. "Or explain why you can't." Ethan Caldwell leans back in his chair, folding his arms with theatrical calm. His smile is small but satisfied, like someone who has already calculated the outcome. Darius steps fully into the room. The door clicks shut behind him. He sets his backpack down beside an empty desk. The thud sounds louder than it should. He looks at the board. The problems are wrong for this room. Too open-ended, too advanced. Not something assigned, something left. His eyes move slowly across the symbols, left to right, top to bottom, then back again. He does not look at the phones. "Can I have some chalk?" he asks quietly. Whitman's eyebrow lifts, just slightly. He gestures toward the tray. Darius walks forward. Each step feels measured now, controlled. He reaches for a fresh piece of chalk and rolls it once between his fingers. The classroom falls into a different kind of silence. No whispers now, no laughter, only the faint hum of the lights overhead and the ticking clock on the wall. Darius raises his hand to the board. For a moment, nothing happens. Then the chalk touches the surface. The first line appears clean and direct. Not tentative, not searching. A few students exchange looks. This isn't guessing. Instead of attacking the expression head-on, Darius circles a portion of it. He draws a simple bracket. Then, beneath it, he writes a smaller transformation. Shorter, leaner. He is not calculating everything. He is removing something. Whitman shifts his weight. Darius steps slightly to the side and rewrites the relationship between two variables in a way that collapses a symmetry hidden inside the problem. What looked like chaos tightens into structure. A quiet murmur flickers through the room, then dies. Maya Patel, 3 rows back, stares at the board. Her pen moves quickly across her notebook, trying to track what he's doing. Darius continues. His shoulders are no longer slouched. His spine is straight. The exhaustion that clung to him at the door has retreated somewhere behind focus. He reaches the midpoint of the first problem and does not hesitate. He substitutes, simplifies, crosses out an entire line that would have taken pages to compute. The result emerges an approximation, elegant and compact. He steps back once, studies it, then nods faintly, as if satisfied. The room remains silent. No one expected him to finish. He sets the chalk down, then picks it up again. He turns to the second problem. Ethan's smile has vanished. This one is worse. Probability layered over geometry. Open-ended. The kind of problem professors assign when they want to see how someone thinks, not whether they memorized formulas. Darius draws a small diagram in the corner of the board. Just a few shapes, points connected by lines. He rewrites the probability expression as a spatial relationship instead of a purely numerical one. Whitman takes a slow step closer. Darius speaks only once, half to himself. There's a pattern. He erases a small segment, adjusts a boundary condition, reframes the equation in terms of distribution rather than isolated outcomes. The chalk moves steadily. No frantic scribbling, no backtracking. Students crane their necks to follow, but most cannot. Maya can, at least partially. Her eyes widen. Whitman's arms are no longer folded. Darius reaches the end. He sets the chalk down carefully and looks at the board as if checking alignment. Then he turns. "Is that what you wanted?" he asks. There is no arrogance in his voice, no challenge, just a simple question. Whitman does not answer immediately. He walks forward, studies every line. His eyes move faster now, verifying, testing, searching for error. He does not find one. Behind him, the class begins to whisper again, but this time, the tone has changed. Not laughter, not ridicule, confusion, something closer to awe. Whitman finally looks up. "Where?" he asks quietly. "Did you learn to think like that?" Darius shrugs. "Books," he says. Around. The clock keeps ticking, but the room does not feel the same anymore. No one in the room knows Darius has been privately mentored by Jerome Lawson for 3 years. Whitman's question hangs in the air like chalk dust that refuses to settle. A few students blink as if they misheard. Ethan's jaw tightens, waiting for a stumble. Maya keeps her eyes on the board, still tracking the logic as if it might disappear if she looks away. Darius doesn't meet the attention head-on. He glances back at what he wrote, as if the answer is somewhere inside the symbols instead of the people. "Books," he repeats, quieter this time. "Internet. Just around." Whitman studies him in a way that feels different from 5 minutes ago. Not annoyed, not disappointed, alert, like a door he forgot existed, has cracked open. "Stay after class," Whitman says, voice lowered so it lands like a private instruction instead of a punishment. A ripple runs through the desks. A few phones tilt higher, hungry for a sequel. Whitman turns back to the board and erases one small corner with slow, controlled strokes. The squeak of the eraser is loud, almost aggressive. It's the kind of sound that tells everyone the moment is over, whether they're ready or not. "Problem sets," he says to the room. Now. No one moves. Not really. Pencils hover. Pages remain clean. The class is still staring at the chalk lines like they're evidence. Ethan forces himself to look down, but his fingers drum the desk in a tight rhythm. He is calculating, not numbers threat. Darius walks back to his seat. His hands are powdered white. He wipes them on his pants, leaving faint streaks on the fabric, then pulls out his notebook and opens it to a blank page like it's a shield. Maya's gaze flicks to his hands, then to the notebook, then away, careful not to look too long. She knows the difference between curiosity and exposure. Whitman lectures, but his voice has a hollow edge, like he's reading words that aren't the real lesson. Every few seconds, his eyes drift back to the board, to the compact symmetry reduction, to the geometric reframe that shouldn't exist in this classroom. Darius keeps his head down. The scratch of pencils resumes, uneven. The room is trying to pretend the world did not tilt, but the phones keep buzzing under desks. Screens pulse with short messages, clipped reactions, emojis that feel too loud for what just happened. When the bell finally rings, chairs scrape back in a rush that doesn't match the slow hour. Students file out, but they do it in clusters. Faces turned toward each other, voices spilling the story before it can cool. Graduate level. Someone whispers. Too loud. No way. He had to have seen it before. Ethan passes Darius's desk without looking at him. The air around him feels tight, like he's holding something in his chest that has nowhere to go. Maya lingers by the door, one hand on her strap, eyes on Darius like she's deciding whether to step closer or give him space. Darius stays seated until the last student leaves. The moment the door shuts, the room sounds different. The hum of the lights returns, the faint rattle of the vent, the smell of dry marker and old paper. Whitman sets his hands on the edge of his desk. I need you to be honest with me, he says. Where did you actually learn that material? Darius's fingers tighten on his notebook. His first instinct is to shut down, to shrug, to offer the same half answer that keeps people from digging deeper. But Whitman isn't smirking. He isn't fishing for humiliation. He looks unsettled, like his own certainty has been challenged, and he doesn't know where to place it. Library, Darius says. The word comes out flat, almost defensive. Mostly, Whitman's eyes narrow, not in suspicion focus. What library? Darius hesitates. Then, he says it anyway, because the truth is simpler than any lie he could build fast enough. The public one. 3 blocks from my place. Whitman nods slowly, as if the location matters, as if it reorders something he's been assuming. He reaches for a folder on his desk, then stops himself. Why didn't you tell me? He asks. Darius's throat tightens. He stares at the corner of Whitman's desk, where a small stack of pristine papers sits perfectly aligned. Because it wouldn't change anything, Darius says. He hears how tired it sounds. People see what they want to see. Whitman flinches slightly, like the line hit its mark. For a moment, neither of them speaks. Darius can hear the distant hallway noise through the door lockers slamming. Laughter. Footsteps. Life continuing. Unaware it just took a hard turn. Whitman exhales, slow. I've been teaching for 23 years, he says, more to himself than to Darius. I've mentored students into MIT, Caltech, Stanford. He pauses, then looks up. And I've been sitting here with you every day, missing something I should have seen. Darius doesn't know what to do with that. He shifts his weight, ready to leave before the conversation turns into pity. Whitman's voice firms. Listen to me. What you did on that board was not luck. It was not mimicry. It was original thinking. Darius swallows. He feels heat behind his eyes that he refuses to let rise. Whitman continues, careful now, as if he's handling something fragile. I want to help you, he says, but I can't help what I don't understand. You show up late. You disappear. You turn in brilliance, and then nothing. I read that as apathy. Darius's jaw tightens. His fingers leave a faint crease in the notebook cover. It's not apathy, he says. Whitman waits. He doesn't interrupt. Darius looks down at his hands, still faintly white, like proof that the moment happened. My mom works nights, he says, voice low. Sometimes I have stuff to do. He doesn't say bills. He doesn't say groceries. He doesn't say the hours that swallow sleep. He doesn't offer details like a confession, but the silence fills them in anyway. Whitman nods once, sharp and small, like he's angry at himself for not asking sooner. "Stay after tomorrow as well," Whitman says. "We're going to talk, and I'm going to take a closer look at your work. All of it." Darius lifts his eyes, cautious. "And for what it's worth," Whitman adds, "you don't owe this room an apology for being tired." Darius doesn't trust himself to respond. He stands, slides the notebook into his bag, and grips the strap. At the door, he pauses just long enough to feel the weight of what is coming next. Behind him, Whitman turns toward the board again, staring at the chalk lines as if they're a message he's only just learned how to read. By lunch, the story has already mutated. In the cafeteria, it travels faster than trays sliding on plastic. Different mouths add different details. Some swear he solved both problems without pausing. Others claim Whitman went pale. One table insists. Darius smirked, like he'd been waiting to embarrass everyone. Darius keeps his head down and eats in the corner, with the kind of focus that isn't hunger. Every time a laugh rises, he feels it land on his back anyway. Phones keep flashing in his peripheral vision, not pointed directly at him yet, just angled, ready. Maya appears beside his table like she belongs there, dropping her backpack into the seat across from him without asking. "Don't look up," she says under her breath. "I wasn't going to." "Good. Because Ethan's doing that thing where he acts like he's not watching." Darius's grip tightens around his water bottle. The thin plastic crinkles. Maya's eyes flick to the aisle. "You want me to tell him to stop?" "No," Darius says. "Let him stare." Maya nods once, as if filing that away. "Fine. Then eat. You look like you're running on fumes." The words hit too close, and Darius doesn't answer. When the bell releases them, the hallway feels narrower than usual. Lockers slam like warning shots. Conversations dip when he passes, then surge again behind him, as if people can't help themselves once he's out of earshot. A teacher's hand brushes his shoulder, too friendly, too sudden. "Mr. Cole," the teacher says brightly, "I've been hearing interesting things." Darius forces a polite nod and keeps walking. At the end of the day, Whitman asks him to wait again. The classroom is empty, the light colder when it doesn't have bodies to soften it. Whitman closes the door, then pulls out a stack of graded papers, flipping through them with a slower kind of attention than Darius has ever seen from him. Whitman's finger pauses on a solution, one of Darius's older assignments. A proof written in the margin, almost cramped, elegant in a way that looks accidental until you know better. Whitman's jaw works once, like he's chewing something bitter. "You've been here the whole time," he says quietly. Darius doesn't respond. The room smells like dry marker and stale air. Whitman sets the papers down and opens his laptop. The keyboard clicks in rapid bursts, the sound sharp in the silence. Darius watches Whitman's eyes move across the screen, then narrow in concentration as he types again. "What are you doing?" Darius asks. Whitman doesn't look up. "Writing someone who needs to see this." He turns the laptop slightly, not fully, just enough that Darius can see an email draft addressed to a name he doesn't recognize. Dr. Sarah Mitchell. Whitman attaches a photo file, then another. The images are bright. Whiteboard, chalk lines, Darius's solutions captured in harsh classroom light. Darius feels a cold pinch in his stomach. Whitman finally looks at him. "Because there are programs for students like you, like me," Darius repeats, and the words taste wrong. Whitman doesn't flinch. High potential, self-taught, under-resourced, the kind of mind that can grow fast with the right support. Darius's hand curls around his strap. I'm fine. Whitman's expression softens, but his voice stays firm. No, you're surviving. There's a difference. The sentence lands and stays. Darius looks away, jaw tight. The fluorescent light hums overhead like it's eavesdropping. Whitman returns his eyes to the screen. I'm not putting you on display. I'm opening a door. You can decide if you want to walk through it. He clicks send. The email disappears into the outbox, and Darius feels like something irreversible just happened without his permission. Whitman closes the laptop. Go home, he says, gentler now. Get some rest. Darius leaves the room and walks into the hallway, where the building has that late afternoon quiet, polished floors, faint lemon cleaner, distant echoes. Outside, the air is colder. The bus ride home is a blur of streetlights and tired faces. When he steps into his apartment, the smell hits him immediately. Industrial disinfectant mixed with coffee that's been reheated too many times. Renee sits at the small kitchen table with bills spread flat like they're trying to take up more space than they deserve. Her hospital badge lies beside her mug. She looks up the moment Darius enters, reading his shoulders before his face. Bad day? She asks. Darius drops his backpack by the door. The thud is dull against the worn carpet. Just weird, he says. Renee nods slowly, waiting. He sits across from her. The table is sticky in one corner from old syrup that never quite scrubbed out. The light above them flickers once, then steadies. Darius starts to explain. He keeps it simple. A challenge. A board. People watching. Whitman acting different. The story feels smaller out loud than it did in the room. But Renee's eyes sharpen with every detail. When he mentions the email, her hand tightens around her mug. A professor at a university? She repeats. Some researcher, Darius says, trying to shrug it off. Whitman thinks it's a good thing. Renee leans back, and the chair creaks. She looks at her bills, then back at him. Pride flickers there, but so does something darker experience. Baby, she says carefully, attention can be a gift, and it can be a target. Darius's stomach twists. I didn't ask for it. I know, she says. That's why you have to be smart about it. Her voice lowers, and the kitchen suddenly feels smaller. The hum of the refrigerator fills the gap between her words. There are people who don't like it when you don't fit their expectations, she says, especially when those expectations come with rules they never say out loud. Darius stares at a crack in the table's surface. His fingers trace it without thinking. I'll be careful, he says. Renee reaches across the table and covers his hand with hers. Her palm is rough from work, warm from coffee. I need you to mean that, she says. And I need you to take care of yourself. Not just your grades. Not just your brain. You, Darius. He nods, but the pressure in his chest doesn't ease. The next morning, the first thing he sees when he walks into school is a flyer taped near the front office. Glossy paper, a clean font, the kind of announcement that looks harmless until you read it twice. Westbridge STEM Symposium, featured student presentation. His name sits there like it was printed for someone else. Darius stops long enough to feel the hallway tilt. Maya appears beside him, eyes scanning the flyer. Her mouth tightens. They're moving fast, she murmurs. Darius's throat goes dry. He can almost hear phones clicking already, like a crowd waiting at the edge of a stage. He pulls his gaze away and keeps walking, but the words follow him down the hall, bright and permanent, as if the building itself has decided he is no longer allowed to be invisible. The summons arrives without drama, a slip of paper handed to him between classes. A polite voice from the office saying, The dean needs to see him. No urgency, no explanation, just a destination. The hallway outside the academic wing smells faintly of lemon cleaner and printer toner. Darius's footsteps sound too loud on the polished floor. He can feel eyes tracking him from behind locker doors that aren't even open. Maya falls into step beside him, matching his pace. "Want me to come in?" she asks. "They won't let you. I can still wait." Darius nods once. His mouth is dry. He presses his thumb into the strap of his backpack until it aches. Outside Dean Foster's office, the air feels colder. A framed poster on the wall reads, "Integrity above all," in crisp black letters. The slogan looks clean enough to hide behind. The secretary opens the door and calls his name. Inside, the office is arranged like a courtroom dressed up as a study. Books placed for optics, diplomas aligned, a tidy desk that doesn't invite mess. Dean Foster sits at the center, hands folded. Professor Whitman is there, jaw set tight, posture rigid with controlled anger. Three people Darius recognizes from the Academic Integrity Committee sit along one side, two faculty. One senior student faces neutral, eyes attentive in a way that doesn't feel kind. And Ethan Caldwell sits near the corner, spine straight, hands folded, expression carefully calm, not triumphant. Worse, reasonable. Dean Foster gestures toward a chair. "Mr. Cole, please sit." The chair legs make a soft scrape as Darius pulls it out. He sits without leaning back. Dean Foster's tone stays measured. "A formal concern has been raised regarding the work you produced in Professor Whitman's class." Darius's chest tightens. "Concern? We want to be clear," Dean Foster continues. "This is not an accusation of wrongdoing. This is an inquiry. We have protocols." Protocols. The word lands like a lock, clicking into place. One of the committee members slides a folder across the desk. The paper inside is crisp, printed, official. Darius can see his name in bold at the top. "We've received a report suggesting you may have received unauthorized assistance," Dean Foster says, "specifically related to the level of material demonstrated." Darius's hands go cold. Whitman's voice cuts in, sharp. "For the record, I observed Mr. Cole solve those problems in real time. His method was original, not coached." Dean Foster inclines his head, acknowledging without yielding. "Your statement is noted, Professor." The senior student on the committee clears her throat. "Mr. Cole, can you document your external coursework? Tutors? Programs? Any formal advanced instruction?" Darius stares at her. The question is simple on paper, but it assumes a world where help comes with receipts. "I taught myself," he says. "Public library. Free lectures online." Another committee member looks down at the folder, then back up. "Is there anyone who can verify this? A teacher? A program coordinator?" Darius's jaw tightens. Names flash through his mind. Neighbors, kids he tutors, the librarian who sometimes nods at him. But none of that fits the kind of verification this room respects. Whitman leans forward. "You're asking him to produce credentials for being poor." Dean Foster's expression doesn't change. "We're asking him to provide context. That is standard." Ethan finally speaks, voice carefully even. "I'm not saying he definitely cheated," he says. "I'm saying it doesn't add up. A student with inconsistent performance suddenly producing graduate-level work. The school is planning to showcase him. If there's any doubt, it should be resolved before we put the academy's reputation on the line." Darius turns his head slightly toward Ethan. The words are wrapped in civility, but the blade is still a blade. Maya's warning echoes in his mind. He's doing that thing. Darius keeps his voice low. "So you think I'm a fraud?" Ethan lifts one shoulder in a practiced half shrug. I think there should be an investigation. That's all. Dean Foster nods as if Ethan has said something noble. We will review your past submissions, Dean Foster says. We will interview faculty. We may examine digital records related to your assignments. This is procedure. Until the inquiry is complete, your participation in the staff symposium will be suspended. Suspended. The word hits harder than any insult in a hallway. Not because he wanted the stage, because the suspension makes the suspicion real. Whitman's chair shifts suddenly. This is absurd, he snaps. You're punishing him because someone is uncomfortable with his ability. Dean Foster holds up a hand. Professor, we are safeguarding academic standards. Darius feels heat climb up his neck. His throat tightens, but his voice stays controlled because letting it crack would be used against him. So I'm guilty until… What? He asks. Until I prove I learned math the right way? No one answers directly. The committee member scribbles a note, pen scratching fast. The sound feels like a verdict being drafted in silence. Dean Foster's tone softens by a fraction, which somehow makes it worse. If your work is genuine, this process will confirm it. But we cannot ignore a formal report. Whitman looks like he might stand up and throw the whole desk through the window. Darius stands first. His legs feel hollow. Can I go? He asks. Dean Foster nods. You may return to class. Darius walks out with his backpack still on his shoulders, like he never really sat down. In the hallway, the lights seem whiter, the floors more polished. The school feels cleaner than ever, like it's been sanitized of anything human. Maya is waiting near the water fountain, arms crossed, eyes sharp the moment she sees his face. What did they do? She asks. Darius exhales once, slow, as if he has to ration air. They think I cheated, he says. And I'm off the symposium. Maya's expression hardens into something dangerous. That's insane. It's protocol, Darius says, and the words taste bitter. They walk together, but the hallway feels longer than it should. Conversations dip when they pass, then rise behind them in quick bursts. The rumor doesn't need details. The word investigation is enough. On the bus ride home, the windows reflect his face back at him. Tired eyes, tight mouth, shoulders pulled inward like he's trying to take up less space. When he opens the apartment door, the smell hits him immediately. Disinfectant, coffee, and warm paper from old envelopes. Bills on the table again, spread like a second set of homework. Renee looks up, reading him the way she always does. What happened? She asks. Darius drops his bag near the door. The thud is heavier today. He wants to tell her. He wants to let the anger out, to name the cruelty of it. But he sees the exhaustion in her face, the way her work uniform is still folded on the chair, like she never really gets to leave it behind. He swallows. Nothing, he says. Too fast. Renee's eyes narrow. Baby, I'm just tired, he adds, forcing the words through his teeth. He turns toward his room before she can pull the truth out of him. The door clicks shut behind him, soft and final. In the quiet, his phone buzzes. A text from Maya. Don't let them break you. Your work speaks for itself. Darius stares at the screen until it blurs. His work speaks for itself. But right now, the school is louder. The next day moves like everything is underwater. People don't confront him. They don't have to. Their eyes do the work. The glances that linger half a second too long. The smiles that don't quite form. The way conversations hush when he steps close, then restart behind him with new fuel. Darius keeps his pace steady. He keeps his shoulders tucked in. He keeps his face blank. Maya does not. She appears at his locker before first period, hair still damp from a rushed shower, phone already in her hand like a tool instead of a toy. "Meet me after school," she says. "Computer lab." Don't argue. Darius's instinct is to refuse. Anything that looks like a fight feels like a trap. But Maya's eyes are too focused for this to be drama. She's not angry the way people get angry for attention. She's angry like someone doing math. "Why?" he asks. "Because they're treating you like a story," she says. "So we give them numbers." The words land in his chest, heavy and strange. He nods once. All day, Darius feels the school watching him and pretending it isn't. Teachers speak carefully around him, as if he might break. Students keep their phones lower, but not away. The attention has shifted from curiosity to judgment, and that is worse. Curiosity can be satisfied. Judgment wants to stay. When the last bell rings, Darius heads for the lab with his stomach tight. The corridor outside the computer room smells like dust and warm plastic. Inside, the hum of machines is constant, a low electronic breath. Maya is already there with a laptop open and a second chair pulled out. "You're late," she says automatically, then softens. "Not funny. Sit." Darius sits. The chair squeaks under him. On her screen, a folder is open, his folder. File names he recognizes, assignments, quizzes, scans he submitted through the school portal. The sight of them makes his skin prickle, like someone has been in his room without permission. "I requested access as part of helping you compile documentation. The dean's office gave it to me because I'm on student council, and I used the words support and accuracy." Darius watches the cursor hover over a file. "Maya," he says quietly, "if this gets you in trouble, stop." She cuts him off. "You're already in trouble. We just need to find the shape of it." She clicks into the file properties. A small window pops up with dates and numbers, neat and clinical. Darius doesn't understand half of it. He understands one line: last modified. The timestamp is wrong, not by minutes, by days. He leans forward slowly, like the screen might bite. "That can't be right," he says. "It's not," Maya replies. Her voice is calm now, colder than anger. "That assignment was submitted 2 months ago. It should not have a modification date from last week." She opens a second file, then a third. The pattern repeats. Last accessed, last modified. Not on submission dates, not on grading days, on random recent dates that don't match any normal workflow. Maya's fingers fly across the keyboard. She pulls up a comparison view, line by line. At first, everything looks the same. Then she zooms in. A tiny change. A single symbol altered. A line break inserted where one wasn't before. A notation that makes an elegant proof look sloppy. A calculation that now appears inconsistent with the final answer. It's subtle. The kind of sabotage that doesn't scream. It whispers. Darius feels his stomach drop so hard it's like missing a step on stairs. "They changed my work," he says. And it comes out as disbelief instead of fury. Maya nods. "Someone did." She hits print. The lab printer wakes with a mechanical whine. Paper feeds through with a dry, steady sound that makes Darius think of forms in an office, of people who decide things from behind desks. As the first page slides out, Maya snatches it and points. "Here," she says, "this access timestamp, and this one, and this one." Darius stares at the numbers. They look like a foreign language, but the repetition makes them readable. The dates line up too neatly to be accidental. Maya pulls up one more window. Deeper in the system, an activity log view that lists who accessed the file and when. The lab lights reflect on the screen, turning her face pale. A user ID appears. Not a student's, not his. Darius's heartbeat knocks against his ribs. "Can you tell who that is?" he asks. "Not from this screen," Maya says. "But the IT office can. The dean's office can. Someone with admin access can trace it." She gathers the printouts and taps them against the desk until the edges align. The sound is crisp, like she's stacking evidence. Darius sits back, his hands numb. "This means," he says slowly, "they were looking for something." Maya's eyes flick up to meet his. "Or making something." The words hang between them, sharp and terrifying. Darius imagines the committee flipping through his assignments and seeing the inconsistencies that were never his. Imagines Ethan's careful face as he says it doesn't add up. Imagines the dean nodding like it's all reasonable. His throat tightens. Maya slides the papers into a folder. "We take this to Whitman," she says. "Tonight." Darius hesitates. A part of him wants to hide. Another part wants to burn the whole school down with the truth. "What if it doesn't matter?" he asks. "What if they still decide what they want?" Maya's mouth tightens. "Then we make it harder for them to pretend." They leave the lab with the folder tucked under Maya's arm like something fragile. In the hallway, a janitor's cart rattles past, wheels squeaking. The mundane sound feels wrong against what Darius is carrying. Whitman's classroom is dark except for the desk lamp when they arrive. The warm pool of light makes the rest of the room look like a stage after everyone's gone. Whitman looks up as they enter, and something in his expression shifts when he sees the folder. Maya doesn't waste time. She lays the papers down on his desk. Whitman reads in silence, eyes moving faster with each page. His jaw tightens. A muscle jumps near his temple. Darius watches the moment Whitman stops seeing this as bureaucracy and starts seeing it as violence. Whitman sets the pages down carefully, like they might cut. "This," he says quietly, "is not an inquiry anymore." He reaches for his phone, then for his laptop, hands suddenly precise. "We're going to the dean," he says. "Right now." Darius hears the click of the desk lamp switch as Whitman stands. The room drops into fluorescent darkness again. In that darkness, Darius feels something he hasn't felt since the suspension hit. Not relief, but shape, a path, a way forward that isn't begging, isn't pleading, isn't hoping someone's conscience wakes up on its own. It's proof, and proof is the one language this place respects. The dean's office smells like coffee that's been warmed too many times, and paper that's never been touched by hands that work for a living. The lights are soft, meant to feel welcoming. Tonight, they feel surgical. Dean Foster doesn't look surprised when Whitman walks in with the folder. He looks prepared, like he's been expecting friction. Maya places the printouts on the desk and slides them forward. Darius stands beside her, hands shoved into his pockets to keep them from shaking. Foster reads without expression at first. His eyes move down the timestamps, then to the access entries. The moment he reaches the user ID, his gaze sharpens. Whitman speaks before Foster can deflect. "Those files were altered after submission," Whitman says. "This isn't concern. This is tampering." Foster's mouth tightens. He taps the papers once, as if grounding himself in procedure. "I will involve IT," he says, "immediately. If these logs are accurate, the scope of the inquiry changes." "Not changes," Whitman replies. "Reverses." Foster doesn't respond to that. He reaches for his phone and makes a call in a low voice, using names Darius doesn't recognize and a tone that carries authority without raising volume. A few minutes later, the door opens, and a tired-looking technician steps in, badge clipped to his belt, laptop under his arm. The technician plugs into the dean's network port with a quiet click. The laptop fan whirs. A loading icon spins. Time stretches. Maya watches the screen like it's a heartbeat monitor. Darius watches the technician's hands. The tech pulls up server audit logs, rows of entries in small font, time stamped down to the second. A bland interface that feels more dangerous than any shouted accusation. Maya leans in. "There," she says, pointing. Foster's finger follows the line. He asks the technician a question, and the technician answers without looking up, voice flat from long hours. "Yes, that's an administrative-level access," the tech confirms. "Not student. Not standard faculty. It's a credential with elevated permissions." Whitman's eyes narrow. "Can you trace it?" The technician types. Keys clack fast. A new window opens with authentication records. Another set of entries, cleaner and more specific. Then the name appears. Not a student. Not a Westbridge teacher. A graduate teaching assistant tied to the academy through outside services, Marcus Hendricks. Darius feels the room tilt slightly, the way it did when he saw the first wrong timestamp. Except this time, the wrongness has a face attached to it. Foster exhales through his nose. "Hendricks," he repeats, as if testing the reality of it. Whitman's voice turns cold. "And what reason would a graduate assistant have to alter a minor's assignments?" The technician scrolls again. "It wasn't just access," he says. "There were edits, multiple files, small changes, spread out." Maya's jaw tightens. "To make it look inconsistent," she says. The technician nods once. "That's what it looks like." A thick silence settles over the desk. Even the laptop fan sounds louder. Foster straightens the stack of printouts, aligning corners the way people do when they need control over something. "This is now a separate investigation," he says, voice careful. "And because it impacts the integrity process, we will convene an emergency meeting." Whitman doesn't blink. "Tonight," Foster holds his gaze. "Tomorrow morning. First hour." Darius hears that and feels both relief and dread. Relief that the truth is moving. Dread that it will move through the same polished system that suspended him without asking what hunger looks like. Maya shifts closer to Darius, her shoulder almost touching his. A silent reminder. He isn't walking into this alone. The next morning, Darius is called back to the same office. This time, Ethan is there. He looks different, paler. The careful confidence stripped down to something brittle. Beside him sits Attorney Caldwell, his father, posture rigid in a tailored suit, eyes like a blade, hidden behind calm. Foster stands instead of sitting. The room feels less like a friendly office now and more like a hearing, even if no one calls it that. Darius notices the detail that makes his stomach tighten. A small recorder on the desk. Its red light steady. Foster begins without preamble. After a technical review of server access logs and file integrity records, he says, "We found no evidence of academic dishonesty by Mr. Cole." The words are simple. They should feel like freedom. Darius's lungs finally pull in a full breath. Foster continues. And the air changes again. "We did, however, discover evidence of tampering with previously submitted assignments, unauthorized access, edits intended to create the appearance of inconsistency." Ethan's father's expression doesn't change, but the tendon in his jaw flexes once. Whitman speaks, voice controlled. "The inquiry was never about integrity. It was about discomfort. And someone decided discomfort wasn't enough." Foster glances at the recorder, then back to the room. "Mr. Hendricks has been identified as the account holder responsible for access and modifications." That matter is being handled separately. Attorney Caldwell leans forward a fraction. What are you implying, Dean Foster? Foster's tone stays precise. I'm not implying. I'm stating what the logs show. Maya is not in the room, but Darius can almost hear her saying it. Give them numbers. Foster turns toward Darius. For the first time, his expression softens, not with pity but with something like discomfort. Mr. Cole, he says, your symposium participation is reinstated if you choose to proceed. If you choose. It's the first time anyone in this building has offered him agency without attaching it to a threat. Darius's fingers curl around the strap of his backpack. He looks at Whitman, who holds his gaze steadily. Then at Ethan, who cannot meet his eyes. Then at Ethan's father, who looks like he's already calculating damage control. Darius feels a heat rise in his chest. Not revenge, not triumph, clarity. They tried to rewrite him into something that fit their story. A fraud. A mistake. A scholarship gamble gone wrong. The server log didn't blink. It just kept time. I'll present. Darius says quietly. Foster nods once, as if making a note in his mind. Then, we will proceed. Whitman doesn't smile, but something in his posture loosens, like a knot finally giving way. Ethan stands abruptly, chair scraping the floor. He looks like he wants to speak, to defend himself, to apologize, to blame someone else, something. Instead, he turns and walks out, his father's hand landing heavy on his shoulder as they leave. Darius stays seated for a moment, listening to the recorder's soft hum. Cleared isn't a clean word. It doesn't erase what happened, but it is a door opening again. And this time, the hinges are made of proof. That evening, the bus windows reflect Darius back at himself in broken pieces. Streetlights smear into pale streaks across the glass. His reinstatement should feel like release, but his chest stays tight, like the school has left its hands around his throat even after letting go. He watches his own reflection blink and looks away. County General rises out of the dark like a block of concrete that never sleeps. The entrance doors slide open with a soft, pneumatic sigh, spilling warm air that smells of sanitizer, microwaved food, and something faintly metallic. A security guard nods without interest. The lobby is full of quiet motion, wheelchairs rolling, nurses moving with purpose, an elevator bell chiming on a steady loop. Darius walks to the front desk and asks for Jerome Lawson. The clerk's eyes flick up, then down to the screen. Fingers tap. A plastic bracelet printer whirs somewhere behind the counter. Cardiac care, she says. 4th floor. Visiting hours end at 8. Darius takes the sticker badge she hands him. The adhesive tugs at his thumb as he peels it and presses it to his hoodie. The name on it looks too large. Visitor. He steps into the elevator. The doors close. The fluorescent light inside is harsher than the lobby's, turning his skin gray for a second. The elevator dings on the 4th floor. The hallway is quieter here. The air is colder. A faint beeping threads through the silence, steady and indifferent, like time given a sound. He finds the room number. He hesitates with his hand on the doorframe, as if he's bracing for what he'll see. Then he steps in. Jerome Lawson is smaller than Darius remembers. Not in presence, his eyes are still sharp, still alive, but his body looks reduced by the bed, the thin blanket, the tubes that make him seem temporarily borrowed by machines. A monitor blips beside him with a steady rhythm. An IV bag hangs like a clear, patient clock. Lawson turns his head slowly, and when he sees Darius, the corner of his mouth lifts. "There's my favorite mathematician," Lawson says, voice rougher than usual but warm in the same place. Darius's throat tightens. He pulls a chair close, and sits like sitting, is something he needs permission for. I didn't know, Darius says. I tried to find you at the library. Lawson waves a weak hand, dismissing the apology before it can become guilt. Bodies get old. Son, they start making their own decisions. Darius nods, but his eyes keep scanning the room, the shared space. The curtain half drawn, the second bed empty. The smell here is heavier than the academy's cleanliness. This is disinfectant mixed with human breath, with real stakes. Lawson studies him for a moment. Then his expression shifts. You look like someone carrying a load that isn't yours, Lawson says. Darius lets out a breath that sounds too close to a laugh. Except it isn't. It's been a week. And a week. Lawson's gaze stays steady. Tell me. Darius tries to start with facts. He tries to make it sound controlled. The board, the attention, the suspension, the investigation, the logs, the meeting, the word cleared. But the moment he reaches the part where someone altered his work, his voice slips. He feels heat in his eyes and turns his face slightly, embarrassed by how close it is to breaking. He hates that the school made him feel like a suspect. He hates that even after being cleared, the stain still exists in people's minds like a rumor that doesn't need proof. He hates how tired he is. Lawson listens without interrupting, only blinking slowly, like he's measuring each part of the story against something older than the academy. When Darius finishes, silence fills the room. The monitor keeps beeping. Somewhere down the hall, an intercom crackles, and a nurse answers in a low voice. Lawson exhales. You want to know your problem? He asks, and there's a hint of familiar bluntness in it. Darius looks down at his hands. What? You're treating their eyes like they're the truth, Lawson says. You're letting their suspicion define the shape of your life. Darius's jaw tightens. They tried to ruin me. I know, Lawson says, and you beat that with evidence. Good. But that isn't what's eating you. Darius doesn't answer because it is. Lawson shifts slightly in bed, wincing for a second, then settles again. When you were 12, he says, what did math feel like to you? Darius's mind flashes to the library's quiet corner. Dust in the air caught in a sunbeam. Old books with cracked spines. The way numbers made the world stop being loud. It felt clean, Darius says. Like it made sense. Lawson nods. Truth has that effect. Darius swallows. Tomorrow I have to stand in front of everyone. So let them watch, Lawson says. The words are soft, but there's steel underneath. But don't do it to prove you belong. Do it because the work is beautiful, because you love it. Darius's chest aches, sharp and sudden. He presses his lips together to keep his voice from shaking. What if I mess up? He asks, quiet. What if I freeze and they already decided what they want to see? Lawson interrupts gently. You can't control their minds. You can control your mind. You can control your attention. Lawson's hand trembles as he lifts it. Darius reaches automatically, taking it. Lawson's skin is dry and warm, his grip weak but deliberate. Listen, Lawson says, when you're on that stage, don't look for their approval. Look for the pattern, the same way you always do. The pattern is honest. People aren't. Darius feels a tear slip anyway. He doesn't wipe it fast enough. Lawson pretends not to notice. I'm proud of you, Lawson says, voice quieter now. Not because you solved hard problems. Plenty of people can solve hard problems. I'm proud because you kept going while tired, while hungry, while underestimated. That's resilience. That's rare. Darius's throat tightens until words don't fit through it. He nods instead. holding Lawson's hand as if letting go would change something. Lawson's eyes flick to the small stack of notebooks on the bedside table, paper-bound, worn, corners bent from years of being opened and closed. He gestures. "Take those," he says. Darius looks at the notebooks like they're fragile glass. "No." Lawson's mouth curves faintly. "Yes. Don't argue." "I don't have room for arguing." Darius's hands hover, then he lifts the top notebook carefully. It's heavier than it looks. The cover is soft from age. The pages inside are dense with handwriting equations, sketches, half-finished ideas. Lawson watches him with an expression that is almost satisfied. "I want you to promise me something," Lawson says. Darius looks up. "When doors open for you," Lawson continues, "don't forget the kids still sitting in libraries, because nobody else will teach them. When you can help, help. That's how this keeps going." Darius nods, slow and firm. "I promise." A nurse appears at the doorway and checks the clock on the wall. 5 minutes, she says quietly. Darius stands, the notebooks tucked against his chest, like something he can't afford to drop. Lawson's gaze stays on him. "Tomorrow," he says, "you go up there and you show them what truth looks like." Darius swallows. "I'll try." Lawson's eyes narrow, gentle but insistent. "You don't try," he says. "You do." Darius nods again, because that is the only answer that doesn't feel like betrayal. He steps into the hallway, and the door closes behind him with a soft click. The beeping fades a little as he walks, but it doesn't disappear. It follows him down the corridor like a reminder that time is real, and so is what he's carrying. In the elevator's harsh light, Darius looks down at the notebooks and feels a different kind of pressure settle in his chest, heavier than fear, steadier than anger. The auditorium doesn't feel like a school anymore. Rows of chairs march toward a small stage. A podium stands under bright lights. A large whiteboard waits beside it, clean and hungry. Microphones sit on a table like quiet threats. The air smells of fresh toner, floor wax, and the faint sweetness of bottled water opened and left uncapped. Darius arrives early, as instructed. A tech assistant clips a small microphone to his collar. The plastic pinches for a second. The wire tugs when he turns his head. "Test," the assistant says. Darius speaks once. "Test." His voice comes out steadier than his hands feel. The assistant nods and steps away. Behind the curtain, Darius holds Jerome Lawson's notebook against his ribs like an anchor. The cover is warm from his palm. The paper inside feels heavier than equations. Maya finds him there, slipping through the side entrance with the ease of someone who doesn't ask permission when something matters. "You're not shaking," she says, eyes scanning him. "I am," Darius replies. "Just inside." Maya's mouth tightens, then softens. She taps the notebook. "You brought it." Darius nods. Maya leans in, voice low. "Whatever happens, stay in your lane. Don't argue with noise. Show the structure. Let the evidence speak." Darius looks at her. "You sound like Whitman." "Whitman learned fast," Maya says. "So did you." A stage manager raises a hand, signaling time. The curtain shifts slightly, and the sound from the audience leaks in chairs squeaking. Low conversation, a cough, a laugh that dies quickly. Principal Richardson steps onto the stage first. Her smile is polished. Her suit is crisp. She speaks with the warmth of someone selling a dream. Darius watches from the side as she praises Westbridge's commitment to excellence and support for talent in all forms. The words are smooth, but they skim past the sharp truth of how quickly the school turned on him. He doesn't react. Not outwardly. When Richardson finishes, Whitman takes the stage. He doesn't perform. He just looks out at the audience, students, faculty, visiting professors, a few people with university badges clipped to their jackets, and then he looks toward the wings. Today you'll see creative problem solving, Whitman says. Not rehearsal, not performance. Thinking. In real time. He pauses. I'm honored to introduce my student, Darius Cole. Applause rises. Uneven at first, then stronger. Darius steps into the light. The heat of the stage lamps hits his face immediately. It's warmer here, almost suffocating. Beyond the first rows, faces blur into a dark crowd. He can't see individual eyes, but he can feel them. He walks to the podium. The microphone wire tugs again. The paper in Lawson's notebook presses against his ribs like a second heartbeat. He places the notebook on the table beside the board. The small thump is audible in the room, a simple sound that somehow makes the moment real. Darius doesn't start with a joke. He doesn't start with an apology. He looks at the board, then at the audience. I'm going to show you how I see problems, he says. His voice carries. It's not loud. It doesn't need to be. He picks up a marker. The plastic squeaks against the tray. The first strokes are not equations. They're shapes. A simple diagram. A clean symmetry line. He draws it fast, like he's been waiting to put it somewhere visible. A few students sit forward. The movement ripples. Darius begins speaking in short, direct sentences, letting the marker do the heavy lifting. He points, circles, rewrites relationships with a calm that doesn't look like confidence. It looks like focus. In the front row, a professor with a university badge tilts her head, interested. Darius doesn't see her clearly, but he feels the shift in the room when adults start paying attention for real. He moves from the intuitive framing into the formal steps without making it a cliff. Symmetry collapses complexity. Structure reduces computation. He shows it like unfolding a map. The auditorium stays quiet. Not because people are bored, because they're trying to keep up. Then Darius stops writing for a moment. He looks out again. Some people questioned whether my work was mine, he says. The sentence lands like a dropped object. A sharp sound in a soft room. A few heads turn instinctively toward the middle rows, toward where Ethan sits. Darius doesn't look at Ethan. He keeps his gaze forward, controlled. I understand why it looked strange, he continues. My record isn't perfect. I'm late sometimes. I don't always look like what people expect. His hand tightens around the marker. He sets it down for a beat. The click against the tray is small but loud. He reaches to the table and lifts a manila envelope. He didn't bring it for drama. He brought it because this room respects paper, stamps, and screens more than it respects people. He holds the envelope up long enough for the front rows to see it, then pulls out a printed sheet, a server log summary, time-stamped entries, a column of access records. The projector behind him comes to life with a low hum. The screen drops down. A technician at the side taps a key, and the log appears large and undeniable. On screen, the timestamps are crisp. The user ID sits in black text, like a fingerprint. A murmur ripples through the audience. Involuntary. Darius keeps his voice steady. These are the access logs for my submitted assignments, he says. They show edits made after submission. They show it wasn't me. He flips to the next page. Another timestamp, another file, another edit. The paper makes a soft crackle as he turns it. The microphone catches the sound. It becomes part of the proof. He slides the pages back into the envelope, then lifts a small USB drive, sealed in a clear evidence bag. The plastic reflects the stage light. This is the forensic export, he says. It was sealed and signed by the dean's office after IT verified the records. He turns slightly, letting the first row see the red stamp on the bag, the signature line, the date. The audience goes still in a new way. This isn't a speech. It's chain of custody. Darius places the bag back on the table with care. The plastic taps wood. Clean. Final. He doesn't smile. He turns back to the board and picks up the marker again. And this, he says, voice quieter, is why I still did the math anyway. He writes again, faster now, because the room has stopped questioning whether he belongs and started trying to understand how he thinks. In the middle rows, Ethan sits frozen, face pale, eyes fixed on the projected log like it's a mirror he can't look away from. Maya watches from the side aisle, arms folded, a tight satisfaction in her expression, not triumph, not revenge, something closer to relief. Darius finishes the section he wanted to show, then steps back. The board is filled with structure and clarity. The screen behind him still holds the log, cold proof, beside living thought. He lets the silence sit for one breath. Then he speaks one last sentence before the questions begin. Talent doesn't come with perfect circumstances, he says, but evidence doesn't care what you look like. The room exhales, and the applause starts slow, then rising, then turning into something that sounds less like politeness and more like recognition that can't be taken back. The standing ovation fades into movement. Chairs scrape. Voices rise in overlapping layers. The stage lights keep burning hot, but the room feels colder now, sharpened by attention that isn't casual anymore. A moderator steps up and announces questions. A line forms by the aisle microphones. University badges glint under the auditorium lights. Pens click. Pages turn. Darius stays near the board, marker in hand, listening more than he speaks. Each question lands like a test, but not the kind he's used to. These aren't traps built from assumptions. They're real curiosity, real pressure. A professor asks about extending the symmetry reduction to higher dimensions. Darius turns back to the board and sketches a simple generalization, careful with each line. He doesn't perform certainty. When he reaches the edge of what he knows, he stops and says it clean. I'm not sure, he admits, but if the structure holds, the constraint should scale like this. He underlines the assumption once. The marker squeaks. The honesty buys him more respect than a bluff ever could. Another professor challenges the geometric probability step, asking what happens under different boundary conditions. Darius pauses, brows drawn, then rewrites the region in a new shape. He catches a subtle flaw in his earlier phrasing and corrects it in front of everyone. A murmur ripples impressed, not mocking. Whitman watches from the side, with a stiffness that looks like pride held back by guilt. In the middle rows, Ethan sits with both hands flat on his thighs, face drained. Each time the projector screen shifts back to the evidence slide between questions, his eyes flinch, as if the timestamps are physically bright. The Q&A ends. People surge toward the stage. It happens quickly, too quickly. A cluster of adults in suits offers business cards. A woman with a university badge introduces herself as Dr. Mitchell and speaks with the calm confidence of someone who has built programs around minds like his. She mentions funding, mentorship, summer research, stipends, words that sound like a different world. Darius nods and listens, but the noise presses in. The crowd is tight around the table. The heat under the lights makes his collar damp. The evidence bag on the table catches reflections like it's still on display. Maya appears at his elbow with a practiced move that creates space without starting a scene. Breathe, she says, low. 5 seconds. Darius exhales slowly, forcing his shoulders to drop. Whitman steps closer, extending his hand. "That was extraordinary," Whitman says. "You taught a room full of adults how to listen." Darius's voice stays quiet. "You fought for me." Whitman's eyes flick to the crowd, then back. Not enough. Not soon enough. Before Darius can answer, a commotion rises near the aisle. Attorney Caldwell has made his way forward. He doesn't push through like a bully. He moves like someone who expects doors to open. People step aside for him without thinking, then realize what they did and stiffen. Ethan follows a half-step behind, eyes down. Attorney Caldwell reaches the edge of the stage area and looks at the dean, who has approached with a tight expression. "This has become a spectacle," Caldwell says, voice smooth but edged. "My son's name is being dragged through whispers based on incomplete information." Dean Foster's posture stays formal. "Mr. Caldwell, the inquiry findings are documented." Caldwell's gaze cuts to the evidence bag on the table. "And yet you displayed logs in a public forum." Darius hears the shift and understands instantly. Overreach. Caldwell isn't defending integrity. He's defending control. Whitman's voice hardens. "Your son filed the report." Caldwell turns his head slowly, as if acknowledging a minor inconvenience. "My son expressed concern about academic standards. Your administration chose to escalate it into a formal process." Maya's mouth tightens. She leans closer to Darius. He's trying to make this about procedure again. Darius looks at the evidence bag, the red stamp, the signature line, the date, the thing that made the room finally believe him. Caldwell points with two fingers, never touching. "Who authorized the release of that digital export? Who signed chain of custody? I would like names." Dean Foster's eyes flick, a flash of discomfort. "The export was created as part of an internal investigation." Caldwell's smile is thin. "Internal. Yet it's projected in front of visiting faculty and students. I'm sure you understand the liability." Whitman steps forward. "Are you threatening the school for telling the truth?" Caldwell's gaze doesn't waver. "I'm reminding you that truth has process, and process has consequences." The crowd around them quiets, not because they're polite, because they know what power sounds like when it's wearing a calm voice. Ethan finally looks up. His eyes dart to Darius, then away. His face is tight with something like shame, but also panic at the shadow of his father's control. Darius feels a familiar pressure rise, anger wanting to turn into words. But Lawson's voice sits in his chest. "Don't argue with noise. Show the structure." He steps forward, not into Caldwell's space, but into the moment. "Sir," Darius says, voice steady into the microphone still clipped to his collar. The small speaker catches it, carries it. The room stills further. Caldwell turns toward him with polite irritation, as if surprised the subject can speak. Darius doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't insult. He doesn't plead. He lifts the envelope again and pulls out the log summary, holding it up just long enough for the front rows to see the timestamps. "This is not rumor," Darius says. "It's an audit trail." He sets the paper down and points at the projector, where the log is still visible in the system's interface: user ID, access times, file names. "You're asking who signed it," Darius continues. "I'm asking why someone felt the need to change my work." A murmur runs through the room like electricity. Caldwell's jaw flexes. "That person has been identified, hasn't he? A graduate assistant." Darius nods once. "Yes. And not my son?" Caldwell adds quickly. Darius holds the pause long enough to make the next sentence land. "Someone with access did it," he says. "And someone decided the story needed me to look inconsistent." He doesn't say your son. He doesn't need to. The room does the math on its own. Caldwell's calm slips for half a second. It's tiny, but it's there. A crack. Whitman's voice is quiet but deadly. Your effort to control optics is the optics now. Dean Foster clears his throat, stepping in, voice official. Mr. Caldwell, this discussion is not appropriate here. We will address concerns through proper channels. Caldwell's eyes flick to the audience, professors watching, students listening, phones held low but recording anyway. He realizes it. He overplayed the hand. His own insistence on process, on names, on liability, right here, right now, has turned him into the thing people fear. Caldwell recovers, smoothing his expression. Of course, he says. We will speak privately. He turns sharply, placing a heavy hand on Ethan's shoulder. Ethan flinches, then moves with him, head lowered as they cut through the crowd. As they leave, Darius catches one clear thing in Ethan's face, a flash of regret that doesn't know how to become action yet. The tension breaks into a new wave of noise. Dr. Mitchell steps closer, her eyes bright with a different kind of intensity. You handled that with remarkable restraint, she says. Darius glances at the evidence bag again. Then, at Lawson's notebook on the table, his voice stays quiet. I'm tired of being a story someone else writes. Mitchell nods, as if she understands exactly what that costs. Then, come write your own. Whitman stands beside Darius for a moment, shoulders squared, like he's finally learned where to put his body when power tries to bend the room. And Darius feels it's small, but real. Not revenge, not victory, control returning to the person who earned it. The week after the symposium feels wrong in small ways. Teachers smile too quickly. Students speak softer when he passes. The school posts a glossy recap on its website, framing everything as inspiration and excellence, trimming away the sharp edges that made it real. Darius doesn't click the link. He keeps moving. He meets with Dr. Mitchell twice, once over a video call in Whitman's office, once in person at a quiet coffee shop near campus. She speaks in practical terms. A fully funded summer program, housing, meal plan, a stipend large enough to mean rent money, not just spending money. She slides a brochure across the table, and the paper feels heavier than it should. Darius takes it home anyway and leaves it on the kitchen table. Renee sees it immediately. She doesn't touch it at first. She just looks at it like it's a doorway that might not stay open long. You want to go? She asks. Darius stares at the brochure's clean font. I do, and I don't. Renee nods slowly, understanding both halves without him having to explain. We'll talk about it, she says. For a few days, Darius lets himself believe the worst is over. Then, his phone vibrates during third period. Renee's name fills the screen. She only calls during school when something is wrong. Darius steps into the hallway, heart already moving faster than his legs. Mama, her breath catches on the other end. Baby, it's Mr. Lawson. The hallway narrows. The lockers seem too tall. The air goes thin. The hospital called me, Renee says. He passed this morning. Peacefully, they said. Darius slides down the wall until he's sitting on the cold tile. The phone is pressed to his ear. He can hear his own breathing, ragged and too loud. He knew the body was old. He knew time was real. He still wasn't ready for the word past. Renee keeps talking, voice thick with grief. She didn't have time to build defenses against. I'm coming to get you. Darius doesn't answer. He can't. The sound that leaves his mouth isn't a word. When Renee arrives, she doesn't ask questions. She just pulls him into the car and drives, with both hands tight on the wheel, knuckles pale. The silence is heavy with the kind of love that has no script. The funeral is small, A modest room. Folding chairs. Flowers that smell sweet and almost too bright for the occasion. The library's head librarian is there. Two older men Darius recognizes as regulars from the math section. A few quiet faces he doesn't know. Whitman arrives in a dark coat, standing near the back until Renee nods once. He steps forward and sits without making himself large. Darius feels the notebooks in his bag like a weight that doesn't belong to him alone. When it's time to speak, Darius stands. His hands shake at first, then steady when he grips the podium's edge. The wood is smooth from other palms. The microphone squeaks softly when he adjusts it. He looks out at the small crowd and sees the empty spaces more than the people, the absence of a big family, the absence of applause, the absence of recognition from institutions that never made room for Lawson. Darius clears his throat. He found me in a public library, Darius says, voice tight but audible. I was just a kid trying to understand why numbers made sense when nothing else did. His eyes flick to Renee. She's crying openly, not wiping her cheeks, not ashamed of it. He didn't ask me where I came from. Darius continues. He didn't ask what my grades were. He didn't ask what I could do for him. He just sat down and said, "Want me to show you why?" A few heads nod. The librarian presses her lips together, eyes wet. Darius's fingers tighten on the podium. People talk about genius like it only lives in certain places, he says, certain schools, certain neighborhoods, certain families. But he taught me that talent hides where people don't bother looking. He swallows hard. He saw me when I was invisible, Darius says, and his voice cracks on the word invisible. He pauses, breathes through it, then continues. And because of that, I'm standing here with opportunities I never thought would exist for someone like me. He looks down at the notebooks in his bag for 1 second. That's his legacy, Darius says. Not a headline, not a building, a person who chose to share what he knew. When Darius sits down, his chest aches with a grief that feels both sharp and strangely clean. Truth without performance. After the service, people gather in small clusters. The librarian hugs Renee. Whitman approaches Darius slowly, hands clasped like he's holding something fragile. I wish I'd met him properly, Whitman says. Darius nods once. He would have had opinions about you. Whitman manages a faint, sad smile. I hope they would have been fair. Darius looks at Whitman, then past him to the exit door. He believed in teachers who fought for students, Darius says. Not just the easy ones. Whitman's eyes lower. Then, I'm sorry I didn't fight sooner. Darius doesn't soften it. He doesn't need to. The apology is real because it hurts to say. On the ride home, Renee keeps one hand on Darius's shoulder at every stoplight, as if making sure he's still here. That night, Darius sits at the kitchen table. The bills are still there. The apartment still smells faintly of disinfectant. The world didn't pause for grief. He opens Lawson's notebook carefully. The pages are packed with handwriting, ideas layered on ideas, half-finished thoughts reaching forward like hands. On the inside cover, there's a line Darius hadn't noticed before, written in firm pen, to whoever finds value in these pages. The work continues. Darius stares at it until his eyes blur. Renee stands behind him, quiet. You're going to go, she says softly. Not a question. Darius nods. I don't want you shrinking to stay close, Renee says. Her voice trembles, but it doesn't break. I want you growing so far you can pull others with you. Darius closes the notebook gently, palms resting on the cover like a promise. The refrigerator hums. A car passes outside. Somewhere in the city, a library light stays on. Darius looks at the notebook, then at the brochure on the table, then at the bills. He doesn't speak. He just starts writing. A new page, fresh ink, his hand moving steady. Because the truest justice isn't applause. It's continuation. Genius dies when the world stops looking.